And we stayed at this hotel in Cabo San Lucas for about 4 hours, and then drove all the way back. That's my worst trip.
Hi, I'm Drew.
Hey.
Okay, so I love Destination Truth.
Thanks.
But I heard you had a show on ESPN that you were on, and your the introduction video that you used to get on it, you conned your way into Disney World. Would you tell me a little bit more about that?
Probably not. So before I did Destination Truth, a few years before that, I appeared on an ESPN reality show. It was the first reality show that ESPN had ever done. And it was a cross-country race between two teams. And you had to get from New York to Alcatraz Island in San Francisco with no money and just the clothes on your back. It's called Beg, Borrow, and Deal. And you had to accomplish all these sports-related tasks along the way. It was horrible. And it was very fun, and we got to do some really unique stuff in the sports world. We got to go to some stadiums and do some things that were pretty special. But it was a difficult trip. And this producer that I met how I became involved with it is this producer said, listen, I think you'd be great for this. Send in a tape, but don't have it be just you like sitting on a couch or just staring into the camera saying why you would be good for this. Do something. Make it active. The show is about kind of bullshitting your way into places and stuff. So sneak into something or talk somebody into something. So my friend David and I went down to Disneyland in Anaheim, and I'm not proud of any of this. It's very hard to break into Disneyland. They have very good security, and so he filmed and we put a microphone in, and I had this sob story about it's so humiliating. I said that my brother was asthmatic and I needed his inhaler and he left it in the park. It was this horrendous lie that because I needed something like I need to get in right now, just let me in, and they did, and so I sent that video in to the producers of the show, and that apparently is what they wanted, and that was that. But I'm not proud of it, and you shouldn't break into this.
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm a huge fan, and I love your book. It's a fantastic read.
Appreciate it.
Wanted to know, this is one thing you didn't mention, but how do you pick the team members for your team, and also, what was the most bizarre experience that you've had on Destination Truth?
In terms of picking the team members, a lot of it is defined by the jobs they have to do, right? Because almost everybody on the show has a job they're out there to do. So we have a couple of camera operators, an audio technician, a paramedic, we have another kind of field producer position. So we're looking for people who have good experience doing those jobs, but also like to do this kind of travel. One of the difficult things about assembling the 8 or 9 people that go out in the field for Destination Truth is you have to, if you've traveled in close quarters with people ever, you have to choose those people very carefully. You have to be able to not just survive with these people for a few months, but you have to be able to just survive with them, I guess, at bare minimum. So we want people that are going to make a good team. People that are going to gel together and work together. And the show is a great experience, and I think all of us that are involved with it feel really blessed to be involved with it. But it's also a really hard run, and so there are people who love that, who can eat that stuff for breakfast, and there are people who that kind of over time can wear down. So we're looking for people who have filmed on Deadliest Catch and who worked on Whale Wars and shows that are not cushy, shows that are difficult, and shows that have hard field conditions. So that's kind of how we target our crew. We have a camera operator of the show this year, a guy named Dave, who summited Everest. Someone has that on their resume. He's the only guy that I know who's done that. I've never actually met him. Is there any other Everest summiters in the room? You don't meet a lot of them. He's the only guy that I've met. But so that's kind of how we choose those folks. And people, this is a question you didn't ask, but it's asked a lot, which is why do those people change so often? And that really just has to do with the fact that those folks are, real technicians and camera operators, and we're putting the crew on the show. But really, that work is very kind of catch as catch can. So when we come into the field and we start editing a season, one of those guys might take a job on sorry. One of those guys might take a job on Whale Wars or something, and sometimes we sort of switch people out based on language they speak or specialties they have in the field. So the crew rotates out a little bit, but we try to bring people back cycle by cycle. In terms of weirdest thing that's happened, I don't even know where that's. I honestly don't even know where I go with that question. There's so many crazy things that have happened to us over the last 5 years on that show. We've had so many weird encounters with, you know, doing creature and paranormal stories, and also we've just had a lot of crazy. I mean, I think that the craziest thing that's happened would be the roof ripping off of my plane in Romania. Now that's not the bizarre thing that's happened. It certainly was the scariest thing that's happened. That's my winner for like craziest thing that's happened in the last 5 years. If you're in a plane and then suddenly you're outdoors, something has gone sideways with your plane.
Yeah.
Hello. Thanks. This is a dream. You're asleep right now.
I watch your show a lot, and I always notice you get stuff like worse than you. How do you do that?
Yes, we have some fine vehicles. I don't know, because in some of these places, like you could rent a regular car. They don't have to be this bad. I think now it's just like they're just screwing with me now. Ryder is responsible for renting some of them, and I think she calls ahead and says, "What is the worst? What's a car that is not actively running that you can post back into service?" Just terrible. I have no explanation for it. It's you know, look, over time it's become one of the kind of running jokes for the show. So I'm sort of happy that we perpetuated it. But we've had some truly terrible vehicles. We've had a couple vehicles catch fire. We've had, I mean, almost all of them broken down. I've crashed a couple of them. No. We had one that was a tiki bar. It was also a tiki bar. We've had a couple of flights. I mean, I love those old Defenders, which you can't get in the U.S. The great old Defenders, but they, you know, they're so old and so beat up in some of these countries. If you're in Central Africa, they give you one of these awesome-looking Defenders that just barely works. But I've never wrecked one intentionally, but I have tore up a couple. I have no answer. I'm going to tell Ryder, though, that you asked and make sure that she read it. Hey, how are you?
My name is William. What was your favorite quest and destination trip?
So I think my favorite episode that we filmed was our trip to Antarctica. Simply because it was the hardest episode to film. You know, every year we have like a hit list of places that we'd love to go. And a lot of those are based on the stories of the creatures and the paranormal accounts, but some of them are also just destinations. We want to, you know, always continue to go to these neat historical locations and these kind of marquee spots around the world. And Antarctica had been on our list for a number of years. I basically march up to the channel every year with a list of insane places, and then they just laugh in my face, and then a few of them squeak through. Every year I pitch like Afghanistan, they never let me do that. Iraq, they never let me do that. Titanic. Ghost investigation in a Russian submersible. Very expensive, it turns out. And Antarctica, we had pitched a couple of times to them, and it was too difficult. It took too much time, and it was too expensive. And then suddenly it just became something that they got interested in, and they said, you know, what would it take to do this? And so I didn't know too much about it before researching it, but you know, Antarctica really is a very, it's obviously a very isolated place, but it's very hard to get to. It's become a lot more popular in the last few years for tourists going in these big ice-breaking vessels that leave from South America. But the problem making the show is you have to kind of commandeer the whole ship. You know, you need to be able to control where the ship goes and how long it stays places, and you just can't afford to do that with those huge icebreakers. So there are sailboats that will cross the Drake Passage at the bottom of South America, these steel-hulled sailboats. And so we chartered what I can only assume is the smallest sailboat that does this. And we sailed over there, and it was a really, really difficult trip. We had to, the boat could only sleep, I think 6, so we had to pare down our crew, and we all sort of took on their duties. And so it was a hard was a hard shoot. So for me, I'm the most proud of it because it was the most difficult to do. It's about 3 or 4 days each way of sailing in just open ocean. So you can't really get up. I mean, you're laying in a bed for 4 days. It's awful, rough, terrible seas. If you've seen the episode, our tech manager's vomiting most of the time. We tried to eat a couple of times. It's like food just going everywhere. And the few times we tried to go up topside during the crossing, you had to kind of tie yourself into the rigging to go up there, and it just was terrifying. You just couldn't even see the horizon sometimes. You would go to the deck and you would just be in these troughs, and you would just look up at water all around the boat, above the sail. I mean, it was just insane. So I think for us to have gone down there and to have seen that, it's great. And it's an amazing destination. And it's a really, really cool place. And I think we all felt really lucky to go there.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hello?
Hey.
Hi.
Hi again.
Hi again. Yes, that's right.
I found my way down here.
You did. That's right.
Yeah, but what I was wondering was, well, your show is about a lot of travel and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the heart of it is you're supposed to be finding these creatures that may or may not exist. What would you say is the best evidence of one you've found, and which one are you almost positive doesn't exist?
Oh, I think plenty of them don't exist.
Yeah.
I think lots of them don't exist, and I think that that there have been a lot of them that we've been able to say at the end of the episode, it's something else. So there's certainly, I think, a lot of stories that we've been able to say at the end of the hour, this is probably just this, some other extant kind of known animal living in the environment. In terms of evidence of an unknown cryptid, I think for me, my favorite story, at least, the one that I want to be the most true, is probably the Yeti stuff in the Himalayas. We've had a couple of great finds up there, neat big footprints, and a couple of interesting DNA samples and hair fibers that we've recovered. The other thing is that it's an interesting story. Just if you travel into the Himalayas, you meet all of these different people, whether they're in Tibet or Nepal, in different villages that are disconnected culturally. They don't trade. They're from different cultures, and yet for hundreds and in some cases thousands of years, they've been reporting very similar occurrences. So it's an interesting story. You meet a lot of very credible, seemingly sane people who really are scared of something that they've seen up there, and there's no really easy answer as to what that might be. So that's the one that I think has, for me, it's the one that we've been able to recover the most physical evidence on, that I'm kind of impressed with. There's another story which we did, I think, back in season 2 in Indonesia, called the orang pendek, which is another kind of mystery primate in Indonesia. And I left that, it wasn't that we necessarily recovered enough physical evidence for me to believe it, but I left there feeling like that it might actually exist after talking to so many interesting scientists there. We met a bunch of National Geographic researchers that have been embedded there, and a few folks from this tiger conservation unit. And these jungles in Indonesia are so difficult to penetrate. They're so thick that this one woman who'd been there for 10 years studying tiger populations, of which they know there's a tiger population in this jungle. In 10 years, she'd seen one tiger. And they have a rhino population there too, and she'd never seen one. And so, excuse me, an elephant. And so we met these Nat Geo researchers who were doing a multi-year study there, and they could barely get cameras in there. So, look, I think that might turn out to be like some sort of speciated orangutan or something. I don't think it's going to be like Harry and the Hendersons, like it's not live in my garage. But I do think that there really is a possibility that there could be some, discoveries left to be made in terms of large primates.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.